It's not a major war like Vietnam, but right now it's tying down 50,000 British servicemen and costing the British people millions of pounds a year. It's a war without a clear-cut present, which could drag on far into the future. This is what Borneo, much of it really looks like, one enormous jungle. About 2/3 of the island is covered by it, and Borneo is the third largest island in the world, twice the size of Britain. Under the green canopy of the jungle, the British and their Malaysian allies are engaged in some bitter fighting against the Indonesians. The northern third of Borneo belongs to Malaysia, the southern part to Indonesia, but Indonesia is trying to grab it all. That's why we're fighting in Borneo. It's already affecting the lives of the jungle people. Some of them told us that the first white men they had seen were Australian soldiers patrolling the rivers. They're an easy target for Indonesian terrorism. In Borneo today, even the most primitive tribes are not safe. In fact, often they're the first to suffer because this war is being fought in the jungle and the jungle is their home. Many small communities have been forced to leave their homes and move to the protection of bigger longhouses, carrying with them their household gods from the old headhunting days. The British in particular do what they can to lessen the effect of war on the tribes, and they even have a special campaign called Hearts and Minds. One of the most effective aspects of the Hearts and Minds campaign is free medical attention. This young British medical orderly, Private Bill Young, walks miles through the Borneo jungle every week to pour spoonfuls of medicine down the not always receptive throats of the local Kalabit children. The British are not being entirely altruistic. In return for looking after the children, they get some valuable information from their parents. Private Young comes from Barrio, a British Gurkha camp so deep in the jungle it has to be supplied entirely from the air. Once a week, an RAF Beverly drops helicopter fuel, medical supplies, and rations for several hundred men. Half the rations are tinned and half are fresh, but it always seems to be the fresh food which ends up in the drink. Supply is one of the major difficulties of a war like the one in Borneo. If the weather's too bad for flying, supplies don't get through. On one occasion here, none arrived for a fortnight, and the situation was becoming desperate. Without fairly regular supplies, a camp like this one simply can't function. The enemy do it differently. Instead of helicopters, they have dugouts, and they live off the country. This means they're less efficient in a conventional sense, but they do have the initiative in the jungle war. They pick their target and attack it in their own time, like this group of infiltrators who raided into Gurkha territory recently. This highly unusual film of the enemy side was taken by a French cameraman who spent over a month with the guerrillas and accompanied them on their raid somewhere here, not far from Barrio, where the Gurkhas are based. This guerrilla group, which includes 2 women, is made up entirely of rebels from North Borneo, now part of Malaysia. They volunteered to join Sukarno's forces and fight against the Malaysians and British. They were trained in Indonesian Borneo, armed and sent back to create what havoc they could on the Malaysian side of the border. These tactics suit Sukarno very well, because by doing actually very little at no cost to his own forces, he can work up a general feeling of unrest and danger and keep the British in a continual state of alert. Anything that these guerrillas achieve, and it hasn't been very much so far, is done with a minimum of supplies and backup. Once they're in the jungle, they have to manage as best they can. If a rifle jams or they have a casualty, there is no radio set to call up base. They're very much on their own. Like the British, the guerrillas rely on the headhunter tribes for news of movements from the other side. On the strength of some piece of jungle intelligence, the group decides to make a raid across the border. Raiders like these are not much of a threat to a strong Gurkha patrol, but they can't be written off completely. They can do a lot of damage to civilians in a hit-and-run attack. This longhouse was attacked by Indonesian raiders. The local inhabitants were so terrified, although they didn't actually suffer any casualties, that they immediately abandoned the longhouse, despite British promises of future protection. How do you stop the enemy raiding across a jungle border that is hardly mapped and nowhere marked? The short answer is you can't entirely. Major Vivian Robinson, who commands a company of the 2nd 6th Gurkhas, explains how he does it.
I have an area. The most important part of that area is the border. It's up to my camp to ensure that the Indonesians don't cross it and come here and say attack the Kalabis here or cause any trouble here. The best way of doing it is for me to be on the border the whole time. Now I can either sit on known crossing places where they might come over, or patrol from north to south or south to north, go up and down.
In the past, these tactics have worked well. No Indonesian has got this far. Here at Barrio, it's only 6 miles from the Indonesian frontier. A frontier that runs for about 1,000 miles, the distance from London to Warsaw, through some of the thickest jungle in the world, over mountains up to 7,000 feet high. And it's not an attractive place, the jungle that these Gurkhas have to patrol in. It's wet and it's gloomy and it's full of leeches. Here in the jungle, as in Vietnam, the helicopter's become an indispensable tool of war. It flies in supplies to lonely patrols, it shuttles men like these into battle, takes out their casualties, and does a dozen other things besides. But to me, the revolutionary thing about the helicopter is that it has tamed the jungle. A trip that used to take a man 5 days on foot now takes him 20 or 25 minutes in a helicopter. Or put it another way, 1 day's march equals 5 minutes flying.
If we want to reach the border and be sure that the enemy haven't heard us, then we walk. We walk the whole way from Barrio, and it maybe takes us 2 or 3 days. But if we want to be absolutely sure that the enemy don't hear the noise of choppers or anything like that, then we'll walk. We use choppers to save our men unnecessary exertion. And after a long, prolonged operative, we spend 3 weeks out, and we're very tired. If we can get choppers, then we'll chopper back. Unfortunately, when we first came here, we didn't know the area very well. Theirs was the advantage. They sat up on the border ridge, on the hills. We were always down below. They were always on top. On the two big fights we had, my scouts were on the ball and saw the enemy just about the same time as they opened fire. And we moved them off. They weren't really determined. Had they sat and stuck it out, then they could have caused a lot of casualties to us.
Over many campaigns, and especially in Burma, Malaya and Borneo, the Gurkhas have proved that they are exceptional soldiers, and in a class by themselves when it comes to jungle warfare. They seem to feel the heat and humidity less, to be unworried by the longest march, and to be able to carry their heavy equipment with little effort.
My basic aim is to dominate the border and stop the Indonesians coming over. If they do come over, I must hear about it or get a hold of them very quickly, knock them and send them back. As long as I'm on the border, as long as I have people on the border, then these kalabis around here are pretty safe. Because we know it very well now. We know the crossing places, we know where their camps are. And we've been here for, what, 9, 10 months. They've come up to the border 4 or 5 times and we've hit them every time they've come. We have to walk on these tracks, and so we expect to be ambushed, and we advance to contact, expecting them to be on top of the hill. And we've worked out a system that if they're on the hill, well, that's all to the good. Then we can then we can go for them. On our last contact, I think we wounded 3 or 4, and they were badly hit. And Sergeant Anwar chap just picked up the Spider. He actually saw and fired at 2 Indos who had picked up one of their wounded, and they picked him up and bodily threw him down the cud side, and then raced after him, picked him up again, and chucked him down. Within 2 minutes, they had him a good 100 yards away. And of course, they've only got to go 30 yards, and you can't see. I don't think it did wounded men much good, but they got him out. They're obviously under orders not to leave their wounded or dead. And we've only recovered 2 bodies. There are 3 places on the border in my area, OPs as such, observation posts, all up trees, 2 of which have got a very good view of the enemy on the other side, the longhouses and the enemy camps. We can see them very closely and we watch them. Sometimes we miss out because the mist doesn't rise until 10 or 11 in the morning, and you can see nothing but cloud, and in that time they can come under it and be in on your OP. They've done that once, but they're very valuable, these OPs, because we can tell when they've been reinforced. We can tell how they're feeling. After a contact, they get very nervous and they stand to all day. They don't walk around in their shorts any longer. And it makes life a lot more interesting.